Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. As we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
Adam ותדרכו בן אנוש וחשבו אדם להבל דמה ימיו כצל עובב בבוקר יציץ וחלב לערב דמולה ויביש תשב אנוש דקה ותאמר שוב ונראה Adam. We gather with all our hearts, souls, and our minds to remember and cherish the life of Jerry. We gather certainly with many mixed emotions, certainly with the emotion that he's no longer with us in this life, but also with the knowledge that in Judaism someone never really dies. Their successes and achievements, their loves, their likes, their families, they are passed on the dor vador from generation to generation. And certainly it is a major custom and tradition in Judaism to name boys and girls who have just been born after those that we cherish so very, very much. So I can certainly foresee in your homes in years to come lots of little Jerrys running around. And those little Jerrys or Geraldines will be taught that they are named after someone that we gather today with all our hearts and souls and minds. In the 23rd Psalm, King David writes that God will walk us through the valley of shadow of death. King David never wrote that God will leave us there. So one day, when your days of mourning are more remote, what will be left are simply the happy and joy-filled memories, and those are the ones that will be passed down to the generations that are not even here yet, but will be in years to come. If you know the traditional words in English of the 23rd Psalm, we say them out loud with all of our hearts. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest the table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. We begin words of love that will certainly be passed down and remembered for many, many years to come. We call up with love, Michael.
Thank you all for coming. It is, or sometime will be, a great comfort to see everyone who's made their way here in spite of the weather, to pay my father, Gerald, respect, and to provide support for my mother, Sonny, and the children and children-in-law and grandchildren-in-law. Dad always wanted the best for us, and your kindness and support and love during this awful time are giving us the best. Nelson Mandela once said that when a man has done what he considers to be his duty to his people and his country, he can rest in peace. And by that measure, Dad is definitely at peace. He was an engineer who worked for the Department of Defense for over 40 years, finding solutions to problems, then interfered with the military's ability to provide safety and security. I'll tell you more about that later, but for now, it's enough to say that Dad's work was literally fulfilling a duty to country. More important than duty to country, however, was how Dad fulfilled his duty to his people. I really mean Mom, my sister Rachel, and me, and the grandchildren. He lived for us. He strove for us. Dad spent more than 60 years building a wonderful life with Mom, who is not only his wife, but also his best friend. It took many years of being a parent for me to realize that Dad and Mom really were, in the most important way, ideal parents. By that I mean they gave me everything I needed in terms of love and opportunity as well as material things. And they gave most, but not all of what we wanted. And no child could reasonably ask or hope or expect for more than that. Now, although Dad's health was not good for most of my life, he didn't let him bring that down or slow him down. He was like former Vice President Hubert Humphrey, a happy warrior who remained positive in the face of adversity and did not let his difficulties bring him down, and who did not complain. Those of you who know me best know that the gene that allowed Dad to move forward with grace and without complaint has skipped a generation, unfortunately. Dad loved photography. He spent literally decades chronicling our lives, and Mom then spent many happy hours putting together the best of his work into albums, some of which we looked at yesterday to put together the collage of Dad and his favorite people, my mom and the grandparents. The grandchildren. Last year, I started the process of looking at literally thousands of photos that Dad has taken over the decades. And I still have thousands to review. And this year, I will honor Dad by looking at every one of those photos and finding those that are the best and have them copied and blown up so I can see them and remember happier times. And think of Dad. I'm sure that Rachel and my Aunt Ethel and her daughters, Marge and Sue, will also enjoy those photos because Dad began chronicling years before I was born, and there are packs of photos of the three of them. Before I stop, I'd like to tell you a few things about Dad that most of you probably don't know, and mention a few tales that make me smile anyway. I know those stories won't mean much or even anything to you, but sharing them will bring me a little comfort, so thank you for indulging me. Dad was strong. I mean, he was tough. And I'm not just talking about, living the life he wanted despite ill health. I mean, he had backbone. He had spine. Once, about 15 years ago, Josh and Jacob and Dad and I went to get our hair cut. Same barber. We did it a few times a year when they were young, and Dad really loved those outings. One afternoon after we got our hair cut, Josh and Jacob wanted to go for lunch. Specifically, they wanted pancheros. I, who did not have Dad's backbone, decided to pass the buck. I told them, if you could persuade your grandfather to say yes, then I'll take us all to pancheros. So for the 15-minute ride home, every 5 seconds, it was, please, Grandpa, please, Grandpa. And they must have said it 200 times. And, my dad, who's tougher than I am, did not get worn down. He resisted, and there were no pancheros that day. Most of you do not know that Dad also had a little prankster in him. Once during my second year of college, he decided to play a joke on my roommate, Dan. In the building where I lived for 3 years, and Mary Beth knows that building. Not Demarest, Brett. There were rooms on each floor. We called them bike rooms because apparently people kept their bikes in there. So, one Sunday after driving me home, back to New Brunswick from Cherry Hill, he walked by that bike room and he saw a length of chain. And I don't know what possessed him to do it, but he picked up the chain, took it in my room, and while I was putting my stuff away, he started unmaking my roommate's bed. He put the chain under it and made the bed again for him. And so when Dan came back later and he got into bed, the look of horror on his face made it all worth it. It was sort of like that painting by Edward Munch, The Scream. To this day, I don't know why Dad did it, but the laughs Dan and I had sometimes talking about that always made me think of Dad and smile. Dad also loved his food, that's for certain. Actually, one of my fondest memories of Dad involves food. One weekend, almost 10 years ago, Marilyn and I had to go into Philadelphia. She had a bridal shower, a baby shower, and she wanted me to drive her. So I did. And when I found out that it was right over the Sansom Street Oyster House, I invited my dad to go with me, so we went, and we sat, and for hours while Marilyn was at that shower, we sat, ate all kinds of seafood, and talked about work, my work anyway, he was retired, and, sports and politics and food. As we got older, Dad and I spent more time together, often just eating and talking or watching baseball, but, that day was really special to me. Dad was easy to talk to. As I've said, he was an engineer. To be precise, he was a metallurgical engineer who specialized in figuring out why gas turbine engines on most ships, the non-nuclear powered ships, failed. And, so his job was basically finding out why they failed and working out changes in design, changes in maintenance so the problems didn't recur. Some people think about serving the country or talk about doing it, but he actually did it and did it well and meaningfully for literally decades. And the instinct to solve problems, which served him well as an engineer, was not really just a profession. It's who he was. One reason he was so easy to talk to was because when you talked to him about a problem, his instinct was, okay, here's your problem, let's find a solution. Everyone needs that. Everyone needs someone like that in their lives. And while I certainly didn't inherit Dad's technical skill or scientific skill, he did pass to me the instinct to try to help people solve problems, and I spent part of my career trying to do that. It's also something I hope that I brought to my relationships with Marilyn and Josh and Jacob, and I thank my dad for that. I said earlier that Dad gave me everything I needed and most of what I wanted, but he didn't just do it by being there or by spending money. He really gave actively of his time and energy. When I was a kid, sometimes I played wiffle ball or kickball with other kids in the neighborhood, and one problem was what were going to be the bases. Sometimes it was that birch tree that was second base, or that particular lawn patio tile was first base. So one day when I was about 7 years old, my dad took some wood and took a miter saw, and he just made some bases. You know, 3 square and then 1 shaped like a home plate on a baseball field. And for years, we'd use them instead of using that birch tree or that patio tile. So it wasn't just Dad expending effort to give me stuff. That was Dad solving a problem, and it was really a meaningful and effective solution. There's a lot more I'd like to say, but I'm going to save that for later when I speak with Mom or my sister or the grandkids in the days or weeks or years to come. Before I finish, I'd like to thank John, who's going to grace us with music shortly, and I'd like to thank you all again for coming and sharing this terrible time with us.
We call up with love, Rachel.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. As many of you know, my father was not the most talkative person in the world, and I'm going to take a page out of his book and be brief and to the point. So another thing that many of you know about my father is how much he loved his family. You can see, for example, in his happiness and pride in his photos with all the grandchildren, which are sentiments that he directed very often at my brother and me as well. So 2 different things, how do they come together? So if somebody is very talkative, you know, if they want to connect with the people they love and they're very talkative, the natural way to do that is by talking with them. And of course, Dad sometimes talked with us, but again, he's not the most talkative person. And so sometimes it was actions that he used to find ways to connect with us. So I thought I would share with you just 2 significant memories I have of ways that my father, you know, has tried to make connections with me over the course of my life. So the first is when I was in elementary school. I played in a softball league that was for a really wide, I see you laughing, Michael, really wide age range, like 1st grade through 6th grade. So you had like 6-year-olds and like 12-year-olds, which doesn't quite make sense, but fine. So for, I think, about one of the years that I was in this league, my father and our neighbor were the coaches for my team. So they were coming to all the practices and all the games. And for safety, the way the games were played, the coaches would pitch underhanded to the kids because there were just really little kids in this. So I have, you know, memories of many years of playing softball, but especially that year where my father was my coach and he was with me, you know, for all of that. It did lead to some dilemmas, like what happens if you hit a hard line drive directly into the knee of the pitcher who is your father? I became acquainted with that dilemma, but other than that, I think my father had a good time, and so did I. The second thing I wanted to mention is from my adulthood. So, you know, as an adult, and, you know, I've gone my own way and charted my path in all aspects of my life. And one of them, like in my career, being a scientist was not necessarily something that, you know, my father would have like guessed for me from the beginning that that's what I would do. But, you know, I went in that direction, and my father was, you know, a big fan and very supportive. And again, you know, we didn't always talk about that, but one of the things that he would do periodically, you know, every couple months, I would get an email from him, like with a, you know, a few sentences like, oh, I read this article about this astronomy thing, you know, in the paper, you know, here's a link, is this related to what you do, or is this interesting, or whatever. And we'd have a little email back and forth. You know, it was just a little way that showed me that he was proud of me and, you know, wanted to connect with me on my interests. And that was something that I really appreciated about my father. Thank you.
If you had the honor and the privilege of knowing Jerry, he went by many names of love according to your relationship with him, a formal name, a nickname, a silly name. When we say the words, we will remember. Please say the name that he was known to you as, specifically, the name that you will call him when you have the blessing of thinking and dreaming about him. Say that name out loud in the rising of the sun, and at its going down, we will remember. When the cold of the winter turns into the rebirth of spring, we will remember. When the spring turns into the warmth of summer, we will remember. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we will remember. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember. So long as we live, he too will live, for he is now a part of us, as we will always remember. We call up with love, Jacob.
Hello? All right. So, first things first, I just want to say that this just still doesn't even feel real to me. But, you know, he was a great man, a truly admirable man, someone I looked up to a lot. I feel like when you're a kid, you don't appreciate having a loving grandparent as much as you do, or as much as you should, rather. But as I got older, I really did start to appreciate that. I just wish I did it a little sooner. You know, I wish I could tell him a few more things, just that I love him. But, you know, his life, he was such a great man. He had a great, long life that we should be celebrating it. And in our mourning, you know, that's all we can do right now. We should celebrate the great man that was my grandpa, Gerald Katz. I'm going to keep it short. But thank you all for coming, and I know he appreciates that too.
We call up with love, Rivka.
When I was speaking with my siblings, Batya and Ezra, about this speech, we were reflecting on the fact that even though Grandpa, as you heard, wasn't a very talkative person, he always made sure to let us know that he loved us and that he was happy to see us. He would greet us with a smile and a big hug and a silly nickname or a joke. He would take so many pictures with his big camera, and he would never let us leave without another hug and I love you. I remember a time when we were little and Grandma and Grandpa took us to the pool. When we got tired, we swam up to Grandpa, who was standing with us in the shallow end. And, you know, we were little, so we were like treading water desperately, and he was just standing there. And we held on to him. I remember he seemed so big and secure. And how secure and happy I felt as we bugged him to ferry us all around the pool. And that feeling of security and love from Grandpa is really a line that runs through all of my memories of my grandfather and those of my siblings, Batya and Ezra as well. I'm reminded of a verse from Isaiah which states in part, "The mountains may be moved and the hilltops may crumble, but my faithful love for you will never change." To me, it speaks to the sense of an unconditional love from a grandparent that Grandpa always gave to me. The sense that love was almost more foundational in my life than even the physical landscape of the world around us. There's so much more to say about Grandpa, some of which others have said and will say today, some of which we'll remember later. His sense of humor, ever-present camera, the mouthful of peanuts he always had when he came over. But I'll end with this thought. The word above for faithful love, chesed, also means like a kindness. And I'm thinking of the feeling of deep love that I was so lucky to receive from Grandpa all of the years that we shared together, and really truly what a kindness it was to receive that gift from him, a gift which I will get to keep with me for the rest of my life. Thank you.
There is a prayer called Mi Sheberach. It asks God to give us a refuah shlema, a prayer, a healing, a complete and total healing of body, mind, and soul. So may we all have a complete healing with the beautiful melody of Mi Sheberach. We call up with love Ethel.
Our father called him Yunkel or Hakel. Some of our little cousins, a few of whom are here tonight, called him Judgy or Jedgy because they couldn't pronounce Jerry. But to me, he was always Jerry. And as several of you have mentioned, when God gave out words to us Katz kids, I got most of them. And Jerry was a kid of few words. I'm told that when we were little, he would say goo goo gaga. And I would interpret for him to our parents. That worked out quite well until he was ready to speak for himself. As an adult, Jerry was a mensch, a wonderful husband, father, brother, uncle, and more. He and Sonny were a wonderful and loving couple who observed the mitzvah of visiting the sick and the needy and always being there for family like me. And he will be missed by us all.
We call up with love Joshua.
Hello. Thank you all for coming. It's funny. Originally, I wasn't even really sure what I was going to speak about, but have you ever doom scrolled before, like on YouTube or TikTok or whatever? I was sitting there. I was laying there late last night, and I was scrolling, and I came across a cooking video. One of those 2-minute tutorials on how to make so-and-so dish. And the dish that this guy was making is pancit. To those who don't know, pancit is a Filipino dish. It's a noodle dish, and it was one that my grandpa was exceptionally fond of, such that he would ask my mother to make it for most of his birthdays and, gatherings and so. And I watched it. My wife had gone to sleep. That doesn't matter, but I watched it, and it was amazing how moved I was by this cooking tutorial. Not to tears in that sense, but it really put me back in the seat of the table, sitting around my mom and dad's dining table, eating great food, as it's been noted that my grandpa loved to do, and really just being happy and content. And it really makes you appreciate the small things, and that's what I'm here to say is thank you, Grandpa, for all of the great small memories, and I'll have a plate in your honor.
If you are able to, we rise for the prayer of our departed, the Emelei Rachamim. Emelei Rachamim, shochin b'amromim, המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה עם קידשי בטרים גזרה רקיע מזהירים את נשמת יעקב בנימין בן Ezra Visora Hinda Shalach Leolama Barachamim Yas Tirea Beseitzer כנפיו לעולמים, ביצורו החיים נשמתה אדוני נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה וno more. Amen. And once again, in the space provided, please say the name. That Gerald will forever be known to you as compassionate God. Eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to who has entered eternity, O God of mercy. Let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bonds of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us all say, before the mourner's Kaddish, the family would cordially and like to invite all back to the Marlton Gardens at 405 Lippincott Drive, apartment 102 in Evesham. All this information is on handouts through the lobby. Today, right after services, and Monday and Tuesday from 6 to 9 o'clock. And if you would choose to give in the cherished name of Jerry, you may give, if you would like, to the Camden County chapter of Hadassah at hadassah.org/chapter/Camden County. It's on the handout. We continue with the mourner's Kaddish together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah bi'alma divrach chirutei v'yamlich machutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei decho beit Yisrael ba'agala uv'izman kari v'imeru. Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam ulalmei almaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yitada v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran v'alma v'imeru Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imeru Oseh shalom b'mromav hu ya'aseh shalom Aleinu v'yakol Yisrael v'imeru. And finally, when I die, if you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around others and give them what you need to give me. You can love me most by letting hands touch hands and souls touch souls. You can love me most by sharing your simchas and multiplying your mitzvot. You can love me most by letting me live in your deeds and not on your mind. And when you say Kaddish for me, remember what our tradition teaches. Love doesn't die, only people do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. And may the cherished and beloved memory of Jerry, Gerald, Grandpa, always be a blessing to all of us as we all say, Amen. You may be seated.